3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, meaning it's packing winds of well over 110 miles an hour. In this case, specifically, maximum sustained winds at 115 miles an hour, and it continues to pull towards the north-northeast as it spins across the Atlantic. Now, one bit of good news regarding Erika is that it has already peaked out and will gradually start to weaken, we think, over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Also, another bit of good news is that it has already made its closest approach to Bermuda, and it will eventually again pull away from the island. So right now, not really posing any major threat to any major land areas. One thing that Bermuda will be experiencing, though, will be some big seas and big swells because of the big tight circulation regarding Erika. It has been generating some big choppy waters throughout this region, and some of those big swells are being felt around Bermuda. But other than that, it's really not having any major impact on any other land areas. Again, here's the latest coordinates. It continues to move off towards the north-northeast. Now, gradually, we think it will start to turn a little bit more towards the northeast as we go along in time, and that should steer it over some cooler waters. So again, weakening is forecasted with this particular hurricane. Here you can see our hurricane, again, Erika, swirling around. Still some pretty good convection, especially right around the center of circulation, and still a fairly good outflow pattern. But there has been a closed area of low pressure off the New England shoreline, a general troughiness off the east coast. And again, we think that that trough will help to steer and deflect Erika more towards the northeast as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours or so. As we get beyond Erika, there's really not a whole lot to talk about throughout the rest of the Atlantic. We have a few tropical waves, though, actually 3 that continue to work their way through the Atlantic. One tropical wave right here, another wave just to the east of that, and yet a third wave just off the picture there. All of these drifting off towards the west, and each one showing some slight circulation at this time, but very little in the way of convection. We have had a few flare-ups here with some showers and some thunderstorms with our second tropical wave. Again, the convection, just some scattered showers and thunder showers, but nothing very well organized, and it continues to drift off towards the west. So right now, nothing looking too threatening. However, we have seen generally a troughiness throughout this region, which is not really favorable for tropical development, but some of the long wave models indicate that trough may start to lift out. Eventually, a weak ridge of high pressure will start to build through the Atlantic. So we think that over the next few days or so, conditions might be getting a little bit more favorable for the potential for some development. Then off the African shoreline, another little tropical wave just getting ready to emerge. Here's another tropical wave, though, again, west of the Cape Verde Islands, but nothing is looking too threatening right now. Another suspect area, though, has been the Bay of Campeche. Here we do see a little low-level circulation, a little low-level twist here. Convection has been flaring up, actually going through phases. It kind of pulsates. Sometimes we see some brighter convection. Sometimes it dies down just a little bit. At any rate, the circulation is very close to land. The general low-level circulation pattern is drifting closer towards the Mexican shoreline, so we think that that will greatly inhibit any potential development with this particular system. Now, as we head a little bit farther towards the west, though, in the East Pacific, a newly formed tropical storm, Tropical Storm Linda. It's currently a minimal tropical storm with winds of 40 miles an hour, and it continues to move to the northwest. And we think that it will continue with that northwest track at least for the next few days or so. And on that general course, it will start to weaken, or start to strengthen, that is. So Linda does have the potential to possibly become a hurricane in the next 2 or 3 days or so. Right now, very poorly organized. All the convection seems to be very scattered about, nothing really concentrated right around the center. So again, that is signs that it's still poorly organized, but it will start to intensify and get better organized as it continues to lift towards the northwest. And lastly, we head out towards the West Pacific, where we have a super major typhoon, Typhoon Oliva. You can clearly pick out the eye of this typhoon. Right now, it's pulling off to the northwest, and it will eventually skirt right across the northern sections of the Mariana Islands, probably in the next 24 hours or so, definitely producing some very squally conditions. Right now, a super typhoon with maximum winds up to 160 miles an hour, so a dangerous typhoon in the West Pacific. Stay tuned, though. We'll take you stateside. We'll check out current weather conditions and some busy radars coming up in a moment.
Some families get more done in a day than others do in a week. They're the first to do anything, including to say,
"Hey, how's it going?"
Now there's a car that does as much as your supercharged family. Introducing the all-new supercharged Regal GS. No other sports sedan squeezes in this much supercharged
Fun.
power and standard safety features into your daily routine. Regal GS by Buick.
Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
All right, it's time to check on the tropics, and our big feature has been Erika the past several days. Came towards the islands, towards the Northeast Caribbean, passed north of St. Martin, and also passed north of the Virgin Islands, just a brush by here. And then it started to turn its way northward. Now it's moved its way northeastward, and it passed well to the east, thank you, of Bermuda. And as we show you, Hurricane Erika as of 11 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time. I think I didn't see that. 33.2 north, 58.3 west, 375 miles east of Bermuda. Top winds sustained near the center at 110 miles an hour. Movement northeasterly away from any land areas, and in Bermuda overnight we did see winds gusting as high as about 30 miles an hour for a couple of hours, but mostly the winds sustained stayed in the order of about 10 to 20 miles an hour. So just kind of a breezy night, no big deal. And there's your storm spinning its way well to the east of Bermuda. And there's your center circulation. There's the eye right there. Visible satellite picture shows us the core right here. There's the eye and this little donut right here. See right there? That's where we have the estimate of the 110 mile an hour winds. No longer a Category 3 major hurricane. It's now down to a Category 2, but still a rather formidable system here in the North Atlantic, so all marine interests want to steer clear of this one. And we're also seeing large swells being pushed out away from our center circulation, still affecting Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Still rough out here. Seas are above normal. Nothing like what we'd seen. And then we get to the East Coast, swells still coming on in, and the surfers are getting out their three fins and going at it. Well, as we take a look at the water vapor loop, well, here is Erika right here. Here's an upper low in the Maritimes, and here comes a huge trough into the eastern United States. And with this huge trough overhead, well, conditions are certainly not favorable for tropical development in the Gulf of Mexico. And as we head out across the Atlantic here, we really don't see anything terribly organized on this September the 10th, the peak of the hurricane season historically. It's today, and we don't see anything really all that exciting trying to develop, and that's good news. Now, as we move our way westward, we'll show you what's happening in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Still not much. These thunderstorms with that trough I was talking about. Down here in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, we've been watching a little system that's been trying to get better organized. Just too much northerly flow over it, so it's not doing much at all. We also have a visible satellite picture to show you. And as we close right into the picture now, take you into the southwest Gulf of Mexico. Let's zoom right in on that visible picture. I think we have that visible picture, and we certainly do. And here's our circulation right here. And the northwesterly winds are blowing the thunderstorms away from the center circulation, so this one's a dud, and that's good news for our friends in the Bay of Campeche. All right, let's move our way into the Pacific and talk about Linda. And Linda continues to get better organized. 55 mile an hour winds now, movement northwesterly still, and this is forecast to strengthen further as it parallels the west coast of Mexico. 14.7, 107.1 if you're plotting at home, about 600 miles south-southeast of Cabo San Lucas, which is right up and through here. So here comes Linda getting better organized, moving towards the northwest. Now we go to the far east, and here comes Oliva.
Hurricane out in the Atlantic, nothing else developing out there either. So we'll start in with a hurricane we do have. This is Erika, now moving towards the north-northeast. It's moving out to sea. We think it's going to turn more towards the northeast and be moving steadily away from the continental United States. In fact, we don't expect this to contact any land now anywhere this side of Europe. Pressure now is up to estimated 970 millibars. They don't have any aircraft in it anymore. It is moving towards the north-northeast of 17. Top winds are 105 miles an hour. Centered at 34.5 north, 57.5 west. That's 870 miles to the south-southwest of Cape Race, Newfoundland. Again, not really expected to affect any land areas at all. Some swells may still be coming into the northeast United States, but that should be diminishing as the storm moves away. There you can see it's still a very, very well-defined hurricane. There's the outflow pattern going in a clockwise direction there, far out from the center of the hurricane. I'll show you another picture and give you the perspective of where it is, again, relative to the United States. Right there is the center of the hurricane. Have a front coming into the eastern part of the country. Also, thus moves all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. You've seen this chart quite a few times during the hurricane season, and you notice the peaks out on September 10th. Well, September 10th is finally here. This is the top day. But it's really basically pretty quiet out there apart from the one hurricane. And of course, we didn't have any storms at all in August. So if we take the period, the 6 weeks period almost now from toward the end of July into the middle of September, there's just been one storm, and that is not very many compared to what we normally see out in the Atlantic. Now, as we look at the upper winds, we still have this trough very much in evidence on the eastern part of the country, east central part of the country, also extending down to the Gulf of Mexico. And as long as that trough stays has as much amplitude as it has now, and it's parked in that position, we're pretty safe from any hurricanes that might move in from the Atlantic. That doesn't mean you still couldn't get something in the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, but the Caribbean and the Gulf very quiet now. Conditions, as far as we know what to look for, look pretty favorable for some development out in the Atlantic. We don't have a lot of shear, but that doesn't mean you're going to get development because we don't see anything now at all that has much potential. Here's a tropical wave kind of moving now, the cloud pattern towards the northwest. Another one just east of the island. Certainly neither one of these showing any organization or any tendency to develop. And now off the coast of Africa, we have another tropical wave, but no concentration of clouds anywhere near any center of rotation. So there again, nothing to be concerned about from that quarter. Now what you see in the Gulf, quite a mass of clouds out here and some pretty good showers. That's a cold front that's moved down from continental United States down into the Gulf. And we have been looking at a little bit of a counterclockwise twist in the clouds down here in the Bay of Campeche, but we'll zoom in on a little bit, but still have north winds aloft down through the western part of the Gulf of Mexico, and anything down here already seems to be moving inland, so we're not concerned with that. Now, here is Linda. This is a tropical storm. Get oriented here. Here's the coast of Mexico, Baja California right up there, and it's moving towards the northwest about 6 miles an hour. The winds are up to 65 miles an hour, just a little bit short of hurricane intensity, and it is moving towards the northwest at about 6 miles an hour. We're a little bit concerned about the path of this hurricane. It is moving northwest, but there's some indications that it could pull a little bit more to the right, and that would bring it in closer to the coast of Mexico and Baja California. So we'll be keeping good track of that, hopefully, and let you know. We are very impressed with the way the organization of this looks here the last few hours, and we believe that this is likely to be upgraded to a hurricane, perhaps on the next advisory, which will be out a little bit later this evening. And to the west of that, we have another...
Peek at the tropics, and let's get to it. I'll show you first what's happening across the Atlantic Basin. And as this goes into motion, you'll be able to pinpoint, well, at least one thing that kind of sticks out, and that is our Hurricane Erika. Still a hurricane at this particular point in time. However, it is showing some signs of weakening, and that is certainly some good news. Elsewhere on the satellite picture, you'll find a few areas of disturbed weather, a couple of tropical waves that are moving on westward. None of those really showing much sign of organization at this particular point in time. So the good news is that we don't have a whole lot of action out there. The bad news is that, well, there really is no bad news unless you live out into the eastern Pacific, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Let's go ahead, and I want to switch sources if I could, please, and show the very latest. And you can see the latest on Hurricane Erika. And there are the coordinates in case you're plotting at home. 775 miles south of Cape Race, Newfoundland, sustained winds of 90 miles per hour. So this has gone down as it's moving over some cooler water. It continues to move to the northeast at 18, and their estimated central pressure 976 millibars. So what we're working with here is a hurricane that is not going to be a direct threat to land as far as the U.S. is concerned, or to any landmass west of Europe. That's the good news. We think that a mid to upper level low area of low pressure up around Newfoundland may eventually help to steer this more easterly direction. We'll be watching for that turn. But we do know as this continues to move over cooler waters, it will gradually weaken and eventually become extratropical and not really be much of a concern at all. Okay, back to the maps we go. And as we go on into, let's see, I think I skipped over it. Let me see if I can get back to it. I'll show you the satellite picture. There it is. And we'll bring that up for you, and you're able to see once again that this is not, we're not seeing the deep convection that we once were. While there's still a little bit of outflow here, and it still is certainly by all means an impressive looking storm, it is not the Category 3 storm that it once was. So we'll continue to weaken. I hinted at this map, and I wanted to show you this because it is, of course, September 10th, and this is the peak of the hurricane season. So the question is, what else is out there? Well, earlier I said good news. It's fairly quiet. There isn't a whole lot to talk about out here. We still have some troughiness in the upper levels of the atmosphere, heading a little bit further westward. There are some areas of upper level high pressure which would favor development. But even though all the ingredients seem to be there, warm ocean water temperatures, and we're also talking about lots of very broad area of low pressure toward the surface. Surface pressures tend to be a little bit lower. We're just not seeing any development out there at this particular point in time. Now, as we look off the coast of Africa, we'll find more waves, but again, nothing really developing. A couple of waves also moving on westward. Here's one, here's another one. This one will promise maybe some showers and thunderstorms into Trinidad and Tobago. But other than that, it's kind of quiet out here. There isn't a whole lot to talk about. Not a lot of deep convection. It looks like we've had a little bit more convection firing up with this wave. So we'll kind of watch things out here, but for this particular point in time, nothing too terribly impressive. A little more convection developing with that. All right, we go into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, nothing organized here. We were watching around the Bay of Campeche. A weak system, a little bit of circulation at the low levels, but that has been drifting on southward, and also in the upper levels encountering stronger northwesterly winds, so that doesn't stand much of a chance of developing. We do have a brand new hurricane to talk about, though, in the eastern Pacific. There's Hurricane Linda. There are the latest coordinates. 515 miles south-southeast of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Sustained winds of 75 miles per hour, making it a minimal Category 1 hurricane. It is moving to the northwest at 7. And again, what exactly this is going to do remains to be seen. We think it will certainly have the opportunity to continue to strengthen. It's possible that this could get kind of close to the Baja of California, so we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. It all depends on what a trough to the north and west decides to do. It could kind of steer it in that direction. So it remains to be seen, but we do think we will find more of a northwesterly movement here, and we'll have to keep a very close eye out for Hurricane Linda. All right, that's a look at the tropics. When we return, weather.